Lately, I've noticed that there's been a sudden uptick in cancel culture stories. More and more people are wanting to cancel someone for something they've said, or now we're even getting to the point where in the last few years we censor them for what they've said. So what's the real cause of cancel culture? I want to dive into that in this week's episode. Thank you for coming back again for another Every Damn Week podcast. I'm John Kirby. This week we're going to talk about cancel culture. And there's a few specific stories that have come up recently that have caught my attention that really wanted me to really dive into why are so many people offended? Why are so many people wanting to react and cancel someone for something that they've said? And some of the examples that I've run across, Tom Brady recently made comments where he compared going into an NFL season, he compared it to military deployment. In fact, the exact quote he said was, "I almost look at like a football season, like you're going away on deployment in the military. And it's like, man, here I go again. There's only one way to do it." When he said that, I was amazed to see how many people got offended by that. And some of them are veterans and such, and I respect veterans. My dad was a veteran. I totally get it. But anybody who is thinking, critically here is going to understand that Tom Brady was just making an expression. He, by no means does he really feel that the NFL is anything close to the military. It was just an expression. I get it, because my dad would go away for a year or even 2 years sometimes, and I wouldn't see him. It's a deployment. And in his case, his kids don't really get to see much of him for about 6 months. Fair comparison. I get it. Another story I ran into was Tim Allen. He just simply tweeted out a few jokes recently, and it just caused an uproar. Here's one of them. "Who is the face of the woke? Do wokies have a clubhouse in someone's backyard, or maybe a cute yet safe playpen somewhere?" Oh my goodness. People went off on this and just started ripping into him for using the term woke. And then last month, he also made a joke about Biden on 60 Minutes. Here's the exact quote. "Biden was on 60 Minutes. I heard he asked how long the show was." I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on. It's a joke. It was funny. We used to be able to pick on the president, no matter who it was. I mean, it's been happening forever. It's commonplace. But the problem is people got offended by the joke. They were just so upset over him picking on a sitting president. So we capped this all off with the Elon Musk completion of the Twitter purchase, with people losing it over tweets like this. "It's like the gates of hell opened on this site tonight," as well as a bunch of other ones, as you can see I'm sharing right here on the screen as well. Everybody lost their minds. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about what cancel culture and censorship really are. So what does it mean when you're canceling somebody? Well, the best definition I've been able to find is to reject any opposing point of view that is contrary to the views held by a specific person or groups of people. It means you openly reject or boycott that individual. That's canceling them. You're openly saying that I'm boycotting these people and you should too. And being angry about it at the same time. So what is censorship? There's a difference here. Censorship, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is the suppression or prohibition of any parts of books, films, news, etc. that are considered obscene, politically unacceptable, or a threat to security. This is where you actively take action on behalf of others based on a certain point of view. And in a lot of cases, there's a lot of people who may have this particular point of view where someone should be censored. Hence, the censorship on social media that has happened recently of various famous and political individuals where they felt it was necessary to censor these people. It used to focus, though, on just celebrities and politicians. Now it's starting to happen to everyone. You remember my bullying podcast just a few weeks ago? This ties right in with that, because what tends to happen is someone who is the offended one. They feel safe behind a computer, but they don't feel safe based on what they've seen, read, or heard. So they decide they have to troll the opposing person's point of view and cancel them simply because they disagree with it. Now people are now taking it one step further and saying, let's just censor them because they're wrong, their attitude is wrong, and they should not be heard by anybody ever again on the planet. Yeah, right. So I want to dig into this. Why do people get so triggered by things that are said on social media or in the press or on video? Why do people get so triggered? People get hurt, they get angry, they get offended by anything. And this is what I think. Emotional and mental resilience is something that they lack. This is something that's a very important part of every damn day that I share out on social media and here on YouTube as well. These are individuals who do not have the ability to shut out the world from their minds and their emotions, and they lose all sense of control. They allow other people to enter into their mind and take over. They lose control. They are willingly giving the opposing view control of their mind and emotions, giving up all sense of personal self-control. When they hear or see something they don't like, their fail-safe switch just simply stops working. In fact, it's in permanent off mode for the most part. They simply do not want to turn that fail-safe switch on to prevent what comes in and offends them from coming in, taking the steps. As a result, what happens is they allow it to infiltrate into their mind. It immediately triggers their feelings, and then a tirade of emotional vomit begins. And that's where it goes. It goes out on social media, and they just go rampant with it. In the examples that I shared just a little while ago, why? Why do they do that? Well, first, it helps them to feel better. I mean, you think about it. When we go to vent with our friends or anybody, sharing our feelings and our emotions helps us feel better. So, okay, well, venting on social media means this is going to help me feel better, right? Well, the second reason is in their minds, it goes beyond just them. They think they're doing the world a service by destroying the source of that pain, by going out there and destroying the person who said whatever they said in whatever fashion they decide to do so. Third, they're hoping to create a movement or a cause that will end that source of the emotional pain that they're feeling. They say it's for others. They say it really is for others and they're helping others, but in reality, they're so hurt that they are really still focused, centered on their own feelings. They really are. This is not something that I'm being just critical over, okay? I have personal experience with this. I actually used to be like this a long time ago, where anybody would say something that I didn't agree with or that I didn't want to hear, and I didn't have the right tools to block it out. And so I allowed those thoughts to enter into my own mind, and I would allow it to hit my emotional state and completely take over and completely control me. And as a result, I'm not in control of myself. I'm not in control of my reactions at that point. Everything that happens just flies off the handle. And this is dangerous, because this can actually lead to other things in an individual's life. I mean, it could even, in some cases, turn to violence. Now, I know how some people are saying where if someone says one thing, it's going to cause that person to go to violence. Well, you're right, but whose fault is that? It's the individual's fault. It's the individual who did not have the right tools in their mindset to control themselves. It's not the fault of the person who said whatever. And that's where we have the breakdown in our society. The blame goes on the people who say things, and the blame doesn't go on the person who should have self-control. Okay? When we do this on social media, it's very easy because we're not in person. So again, going back to my previous podcast on bullying, where you feel safe behind a keyboard or behind your phone. And what happens is we lose a sense of decorum. We have no respect, no compassion, no willingness to consider another point of view that may be behind what is being said. So here's a very valid question. How do we gain emotional and mental resilience? Well, there's a few things we can do. First of all, set boundaries. Set boundaries of what you're going to allow to come into your mind. Without boundaries, well, it's like, the firewall is gone. It's like, imagine if you had a network, you have no firewall. Imagine how many attacks would come in and take over. It's the same thing with your mind. If you don't have a set of boundaries, standards, that you're going to say, those are not allowed in my head. If you can't do that, then all bets are off. All bets are off. We're all the same. You have to have a set of boundaries to do this. We have to do this. We have to develop self-awareness. So self-awareness kind of leads into a few of the other things I'm going to suggest here as well. But self-awareness means we're aware of what our limits are. We are aware of what triggers us to react in the way that we will when something negative enters our mind. We have to allow others to be imperfect. There's this expectation that everyone expects the other person to be perfect. They're flawless. They make no mistakes. And that's simply not true. We are all imperfect people. We all make mistakes. We all have to be forgiving and understanding to a certain degree. And if you can't, well, just understand that those people are not perfect and just leave it. We have to practice self-care. We have to take care of ourselves. So when we do recognize that we're suddenly getting triggered by anything that's offending us and upsetting us, we need to be able to watch for that and take care of ourselves. And that leads into the next one. Watch for the warning signs. What are the warning signs in which we may be experiencing a lack of emotional resilience and mental resilience? Tiredness, hopelessness, loss of appetite. I mean, if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not eating well, that is going to affect your state. I know this from personal experience. If I would have points of where I was dealing with insomnia, or if I was eating very poorly, then my body is not in a state to support my mental and emotional state. Again, I talked about this, the trifecta of the physical, the mental, the spiritual. All three work together. So you have to be able to keep the body in good shape to be able to support the mental and the spiritual side of things. Two big things that I recommend as well to help with emotional and mental resilience. Turn off the news and limit or even disconnect from social media. If these items are something that cause us to have a reaction that will send us spiraling out of control into some tirade of emotional vomit, then maybe perhaps we need to take a break from that. The news is the most toxic form of information we could possibly have in our lives. 24-hour news cycle was one of the worst things to happen to the human race. Their job as news people is to sell advertising, to make money. They do not care about the well-being of humanity. As much as they say they do, they simply don't. They simply are looking to sell ads to you so that you will buy it, so that you will buy and that you will keep watching. So they use news articles to attract you in and bring you in so that they can sell more. That's the whole point. Social media is starting to turn into the same thing. Social media is turning into an advertising mecca. And social media also controls the narrative. I don't care what people say. There are people in social media who run those social media companies who do control the narrative. They decide, a small group of people decide for others what should be put out there. That ain't right. So, hats off to Elon Musk right now. Let's see what he does to it. Emotional and mental resilience builds the firewall around our minds. And what happens is when we have this, it allows us to pause, then to analyze, and to then critically and rationally think about the situation. Perhaps it might be necessary to respond. I'm not going to rule that out completely. But hopefully, if we have developed enough emotional and mental resilience, our response is a little more intellectual and a lot less emotional, a little less emotional vomit here, where it becomes an adult level conversation with the other individual or with other individuals who wish to have that conversation about this. Are there people who are rude out there and say hurtful things and that really should not be said? Oh, absolutely. I'm not sitting here saying that everything should be just spouted out there and allowed. I mean, you can't shout fire in a movie theater. There's laws on that. There are certain things that absolutely have to fall into the guidelines of what society has said is acceptable. But the biggest problem we have is we have a group of individuals who are deciding free willy-nilly what is acceptable and what is not. And that's supposed to be done by law. There's supposed to be laws on the land that decide that. It should not be just randomly up to other people to just say, well, this is acceptable today, but tomorrow it's not acceptable, or vice versa. It can't be that way. That's where the laws come into play. Send it to your legislatures. Let them decide. They need to decide what is acceptable and what is not. But we got to remember one thing. The most important piece of real estate we own, right here, between our two ears, folks. Our mind is the most important piece of real estate out there, and nobody else owns it but us. The instant we allow someone's comments or statements to enter into this piece of real estate, and then we allow it to cause a reaction state that puts us out of control, that means they own us. That individual has won the battle. They have taken our minds over. They have done exactly what they were hoping to do. Or maybe they weren't. But either way, they won. They own us. We can't do that. We can't allow someone else's comments or statements to completely own us. These people have no right to hijack our emotional and mental states. And by reacting like we do, we give it to them. We give them the right to do so. We also don't have the right to force our viewpoint on another person. And where I truly believe when we start canceling and censoring someone because, well, I said so, that's not a good enough reason. Just because I have an opinion doesn't mean that everybody else has the same opinion. And you may completely disagree with everything I've said here. I may have triggered you. How you handle this will be up to you. Not everybody's going to agree with what I'm saying. I totally get it. It's my opinion here. But the fact is that nobody has a right to shut down another person because you don't like that opinion. Remember the phrase, stay in your lane? We seem to have forgotten that. So if you're driving on the road and you were staying in your lane and somebody else is doing their thing in their car, do you yell at them and tell them to stop doing what they're doing? If you are, you're not exactly paying attention to the road, first of all. And second of all, you're kind of out of bounds. Focus on you and stay in your lane. That's what should be happening here. You should be staying in your lane. We have to work towards self-control here. More self-control and building ourselves up to have more emotional and mental resilience is going to be how we fight the battle against cancel culture and censorship. Because frankly, folks, this is destroying society. And it all comes, the source, the news, social media. Those are the two biggest sources for this. And if we allow this to continue to enter our minds and take over, we've lost as a human race. We have the capacity to be smart, intelligent, and to be able to use what's between our two ears here to make amazing things happen, to make progress, to continue to be better as individuals, to focus on our future selves and be more than we were yesterday, and focusing on where we want to go and how we want to be better, instead of focusing on, wow, he said that, and I'm going to spend the next 2 hours ranting over that on social media. What a waste of time. We need to do better as a society, folks. We as individuals need to be making progress. And this is where I challenge you. Focus on making progress, being better. If you're offended by what somebody says on social media, turn it off. Try not responding. Try just ignoring it and moving on. See what happens. Does it shatter your life completely? Does it end is it the end of your life? Is it the end of all days? You might be surprised to find differently. It is not so. And I can tell you from experience, I thought that. There were times when things would happen in my home or things would happen in my life where I would think, wow, this couldn't get any worse. That's it. And just throw my hands up. That was a lack of emotional and mental resilience, something I've worked very hard on, something where I've made progress every day to get there. And I've done extremely well with this. And I feel that if we focus on this, folks, getting control of ourselves, that's important. You remember the Janet Jackson song, Control? It's all about control. And I have lots of it now. And you should too. Thank you for joining me this week, folks. And I'll talk to you next week for another Every Damn Week podcast. Thanks and take care.